All been there, like staring at that wall of flooring samples at the store, and you're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to pick one? And then how am I going to actually install the thing?
It can be so overwhelming.
Totally overwhelming.
Yeah.
But let's say you've got past that hurdle, you've picked your dream flooring, but now the real work begins. So today, we're diving into 10 unusual flooring installation tips from a flooring fitter to learn those pro secrets to really up our DIY game.
Yeah, and you know what I find really interesting about this source is it reminds us that, even seasoned pros, they don't dismiss the basics.
Right.
It's like a chef who still obsesses over, the quality of their ingredients.
Yeah.
It's not just about the fancy techniques, it's about that groundwork.
I like that. So tip number 1, it's all about prepping that subfloor.
Hmm.
I mean, it sounds obvious,
Yeah.
but the source makes it clear this step is like non-negotiable.
Absolutely. The expert really drives home this point that a perfect floor, it starts with a perfectly prepped subfloor. It's so tempting to just want to jump ahead to the installation part.
Right, yeah.
But that foundation, it impacts everything.
Yeah.
Like imagine building a house on uneven ground. You're just asking for trouble, right?
Exactly.
Same principle applies to flooring. Moisture, unevenness, debris. You address those issues now and you set yourself up for success later.
It's all about that strong base. Now, once that's sorted, the source throws us tip number 2. Visualize the layout. Don't just start laying planks.
Right. It's like that moment before you start a painting and you're kind of envisioning the composition. This tip, it encourages us to really think about, the direction, the pattern. Do you want the floorboards to kind of draw your eye towards a window or create a sense of length in a narrow hallway?
Yeah.
It's amazing how the way those planks are laid can just totally change the look and feel of the space.
So it's almost like you're using the flooring to kind of sculpt the space,
Yeah.
not just cover it up.
Exactly. It's about making these really intentional design choices. For example, if you have a narrow room running planks, lengthwise, can actually create the illusion of more space.
Wow.
Who knew flooring could have such transformative power?
That's incredible. It's
Yeah.
amazing what a little planning can achieve. Now, this next tip, this one really spoke to my DIY anxieties. Tip number 3 reassures us that we don't need to go out and buy every single tool under the sun. Thank goodness.
Right.
My garage is already full.
Yes. Renting tools, it's a game changer. It's cost effective. It saves you from, having that garage full of tools you might only use once.
Totally.
And plus, you get access to the right equipment for your specific flooring type, which is, essential for that professional looking result.
Yeah, it's about working smarter, not harder.
Exactly.
And who doesn't love that? You're shifting gears a bit. Tip number 4 dives into the aesthetic impact of flooring, especially when you're working across multiple rooms.
Yeah, this is a good one. This tip really emphasizes the importance of consistent installation direction throughout your entire home.
Okay.
Think of it this way. Each room should flow seamlessly into the next. And by maintaining that consistent direction, you create this cohesive visual journey.
So it's about the big picture, not just each room in isolation. It's like when you're decorating a home, you want each room to kind of complement the others, tell a story.
Precisely. Just imagine walking into a home where the flooring direction abruptly changes from room to room.
Yeah.
It's jarring.
It would be weird.
And it disrupts that sense of flow.
Yeah, this tip really highlights that flooring can make or break the overall aesthetic of your home. It's like you're creating a visual symphony across your whole home. Okay, so speaking of flow, tip number 6 seems a bit specific, but it apparently has a big impact on how the floor looks. In the end, starting your installation from the left corner of the longest wall.
Yeah, it sounds kind of random, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like, why the left corner? But there's a method to the madness. It's all about working with the natural light in the room.
Okay.
So by starting on the left and following the direction of the light, you minimize how much you see any little imperfections or shadows between the planks.
Interesting.
It's one of those subtle details that a trained eye would pick up on.
So it's like a little secret design trick to make the floor look even more perfect.
Exactly.
I like it.
And speaking of those pro tricks, tip number 7, this one really stood out to me. You know that feeling when you suddenly realize, oh gosh, I have to make this really tricky cut around a pipe or a curved doorway?
Oh, yeah.
Well, this tip is genius. It says use cardboard templates.
Cardboard templates. That's so smart.
Right.
Why didn't I think of that?
It's such a simple but effective idea. You take the time to make this precise template, and you completely eliminate the risk of making a mistake that costs you money and wasting material.
It's like that saying, Measure twice, cut once,
Yes.
but like taken to a whole new level.
Exactly. It's about working smarter, not harder, and avoiding those like DIY moments of frustration.
Nobody wants that.
No. So let's move on to something that I think often gets overlooked but is so important, the underlay.
Yeah. The underlay. It's like the unsung hero of a beautiful floor, right?
100%. And that brings us to tip number 5, which really emphasizes how important it is to install your underlay properly. All those little details, they seem small, but they make a big difference. Making sure the lengths are all laid parallel, not overlapping the tape, leaving those gaps around pipes that can make or break your final result.
It's all in the details.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when you're baking a cake, forgetting the baking powder might not seem like a big deal, but it can totally ruin the cake.
Exactly. And it's fascinating. The source really emphasizes this attention to detail. It's a sign of a true professional.
Right.
It's about respecting every single part of the process, not just the parts that you see.
I love that. So it's not just about getting it done. It's about doing it carefully and precisely, even in those areas that nobody's going to see.
Exactly.
Which leads us to the final 3 tips from this flooring fitter, all about keeping that professional mindset throughout your whole flooring project.
Yeah, the source really emphasizes how important it is to break down the work into smaller, more manageable chunks. And that's tip number 8.
Okay.
This does 2 things. It makes this huge job feel less overwhelming, and it lets you focus on getting those perfect results one section at a time.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
It is easy to get overwhelmed when you're looking at a big empty floor.
totally. And then tip number 9 is all about channeling your inner neat freak.
Okay.
Keep things tidy as you go along. I know it sounds obvious cleaning up spills and, any debris straight away, but you'd be surprised how easy it is to forget that when you're in the zone.
Oh, yeah. I've been there. I always tell myself, clean as you go, even if it's just so I don't trip over something.
Exactly. And then finally, the last nugget of wisdom from our flooring guru is a simple one, but so easy to forget. Save your leftover materials.
Saving leftovers. Isn't that just common sense?
It is, but it shows you're thinking ahead like the pros do. They're already thinking about, okay, what if something needs fixing later on? You want to make sure you have the exact same materials to do it.
So it's about being proactive, anticipating problems before they even happen.
Exactly.
That's impressive. Yeah, it's like they say, hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. But I guess in this case, it's more like prepare for the best and be ready for anything.
Right. It's about having that long-term vision for your project. And, it makes me think about something we talked about earlier, that whole idea of having a professional mindset. It's not just about having the skills. It's about cultivating a certain approach, that attention to detail that really makes the difference between a good result and a truly great one.
Yeah, that's such a good point. It's like the difference between someone who can follow a recipe and someone who really gets why each ingredient is there, the whole science of baking.
Exactly. It's about understanding those subtle things, those seemingly small decisions that can actually elevate the whole thing.
So it's pretty amazing how these kind of unusual tips have actually revealed some really important truths about how to approach any project, really, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It all comes down to preparation, visualization, being resourceful, really paying attention to those little details. And these are principles that go way beyond just installing a floor.
That's so true. It makes you wonder where else we could be applying these ideas in our lives, whether we're tackling a creative project or learning something new, or even just dealing with a tough challenge at work, Using those same principles of planning carefully, being resourceful, not being afraid to sweat the small stuff, it can make all the difference.
I think you're absolutely right. It's about putting that same level of care and intention into everything we do, big or small.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of flooring, I think we've discovered way more than just installation tips. We've actually uncovered a whole blueprint for how to approach any project with a pro's mindset. One that values preparation, resourcefulness, and the power, those tiny but mighty details. Definitely something to think about